Week 7 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few kickers I looked at off the wire this week. The first kicker, Jake Bates, of the Detroit Lions. Jake Bates, he has a big boot on a high-powered offense, and we saw it at the Dallas Cowboys with 19 fantasy points. So Week 7 versus a bend-but-don't-break type of defense of the Minnesota Vikings. I think Bates could go out there, have a good game. Obviously, it's an indoor game, division matchup where anything really goes in those matchups between any division rival for the most part is just unpredictable. So like I said, Jake Bates, this season numbers haven't been great, but this offense has kicked another gear. We saw it last week at the Dallas Cowboys, and he's going to get many opportunities weekly. So this week, he's available right now in 72% of fantasy leagues. And a kicker to add off the wire, next kicker, Austin Seibert of the Washington Commanders. Seibert, he's been a great add over the last couple weeks, and he's been on the list as well. So the last few games, he's gone out there with double-digit fantasy points 3 games in a row. Week 4 at Arizona, 11 fantasy points. Week 5 versus Cleveland, 10. And Week 6 at Baltimore, 15 fantasy points. And it could have been even more for Seibert, where he got blocked on a 50-plus yarder, so he's got a big boot. They signed him up in Week 2, was his Commander team. And we know this Commander offense, one of the more high-powered offenses in the league. And who would have thought coming into the season? So definitely was a tough loss for them at Baltimore. But this week, a great matchup versus the Carolina Panthers. I think Seibert's going to get more opportunities once again, and he's definitely a kicker to get off the wire, available in 74% of fantasy leagues. Next kicker, Braden Narvison of the Green Bay Packers. Narvison, he's been on the list for the majority of the season, and he's another kicker this season. 4 out of 6 games, double-digit fantasy points. Week 4 versus Minnesota, 3. Week 5 at the Rams, 7. And Week 6 versus Arizona, 11. But Week 7, a great matchup coming up versus the Houston Texans, where this is going to be a shootout, I believe, between these two teams. Up and down the field, Narvison's got a good boot where he could kick it 50-plus yards. I know he had a hiccup in Week 4 versus the Vikings, where he missed 2 key field goals in that game. But like I said, he's a kicker with a nice boot. He's Narvison, and he's on a high-powered offense like the Green Bay Packers, where they've been in the red zone early and often a majority of the season when Jordan Love's been in the lineup. So this week, I think Narvison once again could go out there and be a solid kicker for fantasy owners. Next kicker, Cameron Dicker of the Los Angeles Chargers. So the good news is the Chargers' bye week is done. Also, as well, they stall out a lot in the red zone is this Los Angeles Charger team. And Dicker, he's got a good boot and good range. So on the season for Dicker, 3 out of 5 games this season, he has double-digit fantasy points. So the last few games for him, I know, were down games. Week 3, only 4 at Pittsburgh. Week 4 versus Kansas City, 6. And Week 6 at Denver, 12, which was a great game. So now Arizona, Week 7, they give up a lot of points. Teams have gone up and down the field all season. And it's an indoor game as well, which is always a plus at the Arizona Cardinals. And also, majority of their games this season at home. Obviously, for this Charger team, where their home games are indoors, and also at Vegas, they got to visit as well. So this season, 11, 12 games total, it'll be for Dicker indoors. And that's always a plus for a kicker, not dealing with the elements and just a true accuracy he would need to kick it through the uprights. And that's what I think can help fantasy owners and Dicker this season, especially in an offense that stalls out a lot. And the final kick I looked at off the wire is Blake Grupp, the New Orleans Saints. So Blake Grupp, another kicker, plays indoors. And this season, it's been a solid year for the most part for Blake Grupp, especially Week 1. He went out there, 22 fantasy points. And the remainder of the year, 6 or more fantasy points for 5 out of 6 weeks. So Grupp coming off a double-digit performance versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Quick turnaround, Denver Broncos and Sean Payton, former head coach, coming to town Thursday night versus the Denver Broncos. And they are bend but don't break type of defense for the most part. It's Denver. Even though we know Patrick Surtain, he left last week's game and the Chargers had their way with their defense, but I believe it's going to be a defense contested ball game in this one. And Blake Grupp's going to settle for a few field goals. He's available 92% of fantasy leagues. That's a few kickers I looked at off the wire for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.